The morning of November 20th, 2006 began like any other day in Atlantic City. Cars moved through busy streets. People headed to work. Nothing seemed unusual, but hidden beside a drainage ditch near a motel district, a horrifying scene was waiting to be discovered. Four women had been brutally murdered. Their bodies were arranged in a chilling line, each positioned face down, each separated by roughly the same distance. The shocking discovery immediately sent fear through the city. Detectives rushed to the scene, trying to understand who could commit such a calculated crime. Yet among those four victims was one woman whose story would leave investigators searching for answers for years. Her name was Kim Raffo. Kim was only 35 years old. She was a mother, a sister, a friend. People who knew her described someone who desperately wanted stability despite the struggles that constantly pulled her backward. She had married young and raised two children. She grew up in Brooklyn before eventually moving south, hoping for a better future. But life rarely followed the path she imagined. Addiction became a constant battle. Every attempt to rebuild seemed followed by another setback. Still, those closest to her believed she never stopped trying. In 2003, Kim moved to Atlantic City with her boyfriend, Kenny. The relationship had started after they met during a cooking class in Florida. For a time, things appeared hopeful, but addiction tightened its grip again. Financial problems followed. Kim eventually worked as a sex worker while trying to survive another difficult chapter. Then, during November 2006, everything changed forever. Some reports suggest Kim was last seen during the early morning hours of November 19th. After that, silence. No warning. No explanation. Then came the horrifying discovery beside that drainage ditch. But what investigators found at the crime scene would raise even darker questions. Investigators arriving at the drainage ditch quickly realized they were not looking at a random act of violence. The scene appeared organized, deliberate, almost staged. Four women had been placed in a straight line. Each victim faced the same direction. Each body was separated by nearly identical distances. Whoever committed these murders had taken time after the killings. That detail immediately terrified detectives. This was not chaos. This was control. Among the victims was Kim Raffo. Detectives began retracing her final known movements. Friends described a woman struggling with addiction, but still trying to survive. Family members refused to believe her life would end this way. They hoped police would quickly identify the killer. But what they didn't know was that this investigation was already becoming far more complicated than anyone imagined. Authorities learned that all four victims shared similarities. They worked in Atlantic City's street economy. They often traveled through the same neighborhoods. They were vulnerable. Yet none of the women appeared connected beyond those circumstances. Detectives searched for witnesses. They reviewed tips. They interviewed dozens of people. But nobody seemed to know exactly what happened during the hours before the murders. The crime scene raised even more disturbing questions. Why were the women left together? Why were their shoes and socks missing? Why had the killer arranged the bodies instead of hiding them? Every answer seemed to create two new mysteries. As news spread across Atlantic City, fear exploded throughout the community. Women working the streets became terrified. Residents wondered whether a serial killer was hunting victims nearby. Rumors traveled faster than facts. Some believed the murders were connected to organized crime. Others suspected someone known within the local community. But investigators lacked the evidence needed to support any theory. Then another troubling realization emerged. The killer had left almost nothing behind, and that discovery would push the case toward its first major dead end. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Despite intense media attention, investigators remained trapped in uncertainty. Detectives followed countless leads, but each one seemed to collapse under scrutiny. Every potential witness offered fragments instead of answers. Every promising clue eventually led nowhere. Meanwhile, Kim Raffo's family waited for a phone call they desperately hoped would come. It never did. Police examined the backgrounds of all four victims. They mapped locations. They compared associates. They searched for common contacts who might connect the murders. The investigation generated mountains of paperwork. Yet the central question remained unchanged. Who had killed these women and why? Some investigators believe the murders reflected the work of a serial offender. The positioning of the bodies suggested planning. The careful arrangement suggested confidence. But proving such a theory required evidence. Evidence was exactly what investigators lacked. As frustration grew, detectives explored alternative possibilities. Could multiple people have been involved? Could the women have encountered someone pretending to be a customer? Could a violent offender have targeted vulnerable victims while remaining invisible to law enforcement? Each possibility sounded plausible. None could be proven. For Kim's loved ones, the uncertainty became torture. Grief is painful enough when answers exist. In this case, answers remained locked behind silence. Birthdays passed. Holidays arrived. Family gatherings felt incomplete. Every year without justice deepened the wound. Then came another challenge. Public attention slowly faded. New crimes dominated headlines. New investigations attracted resources. The Atlantic City murders gradually transformed into a cold case. Detectives continued working behind the scenes, but momentum weakened. Witness memories faded. Opportunities disappeared. Time became the killer's greatest ally. Yet hidden inside old files were details investigators refused to abandon. Certain aspects of the crime scene continued bothering experienced detectives. Something about the arrangement. Something about the precision. Something about the confidence. And years later, those lingering questions would suddenly return when another serial killer investigation captured national attention. For years, the Atlantic City murders remained unsolved. Then, in 2023, headlines across America exploded with a shocking arrest. Authorities arrested Rex Hoyerman in connection with a Long Island serial killer investigation. The case had haunted investigators for more than a decade. Suddenly, people everywhere began asking a new question. Could the murders of Kim Raffo and the other Atlantic City victims be connected? The similarities appeared impossible to ignore. Multiple female victims, vulnerable lifestyles, unsolved murders, geographic proximity along the East Coast. Online discussions erupted almost immediately. True crime communities compared timelines. Reporters examined old evidence. Families wondered whether a breakthrough had finally arrived. For the relatives of Kim Raffo, the possibility created conflicting emotions. Hope returned after years of frustration. Perhaps investigators had finally found the person responsible. Perhaps justice was approaching. But what they didn't know was that another painful twist was waiting. Authorities carefully reviewed the possibility of a connection. Investigators compared travel records. They analyzed timelines. They studied available evidence from both cases. Every detail received renewed scrutiny. Public interest intensified as speculation spread across television programs, websites, and social media. For a moment, it seemed possible that two notorious mysteries might share the same answer. Then investigators delivered unexpected news. According to law enforcement, evidence did not support Rex Hoyerman's involvement in the Atlantic City murders. The theory that had captured national attention began collapsing. The connection people hoped would solve Kim's case simply wasn't there. Once again, investigators found themselves standing at the same frustrating starting point. The killer remained unidentified. The evidence remained incomplete. The questions remained unanswered. For Kim's family, the disappointment was devastating. Another potential breakthrough had disappeared. Another path toward justice had ended. Yet the renewed attention accomplished something important. It brought the forgotten case back into public view. New discussions began. Old evidence received fresh examination. And investigators hoped someone, somewhere, might finally reveal the secret that had remained hidden since 2006. As renewed interest surrounded the case, investigators returned to the details that had always made these murders so disturbing. The killer had not simply murdered 4 women. The killer had displayed them. That distinction mattered. Criminal profilers often study behavior after a crime because it can reveal personality traits, motivations, and psychological patterns. In this case, The arrangement suggested confidence and control. Detectives revisited witness statements collected years earlier. Some tips had once seemed insignificant. Others had been impossible to verify. Advances in technology offered new opportunities to analyze information that investigators could only dream about in 2006. But technology alone could not solve the mystery. Someone still knew something. The challenge remained identifying that person. As the years passed, countless theories emerged. Some focused on local offenders familiar with Atlantic City. Others suggested a transient killer moving between states. Certain observers believe the offender may have blended effortlessly into everyday life, appearing ordinary while hiding unimaginable violence. The possibilities were endless. The evidence was limited. Meanwhile, Kim Raffo's story risked being overshadowed by the larger mystery. Behind every theory stood a real person whose life had ended in violence. She was more than a victim in a headline. She was a mother whose children grew older without her. She was a daughter whose family never received answers. She was a woman whose struggles never erased her humanity. That reality continued motivating investigators and loved ones alike. Every cold case carries a unique burden. Time can destroy evidence. Witnesses relocate. Memories fade. But unresolved murders create another consequence. They leave families trapped between grief and uncertainty. Without answers, healing becomes almost impossible. Today, Kim Raffo's murder remains unsolved. The person responsible has never been identified publicly. The questions surrounding that drainage ditch remain hauntingly relevant. But somewhere within forgotten memories, overlooked evidence, or a secret someone has carried for years, the truth may still exist. And when that truth finally emerges, everything could change. One of the most disturbing aspects of the Kim Raffo case is not simply that 4 women were murdered. It is the possibility that the killer may have felt completely comfortable committing these crimes. Detectives have long believed that the positioning of the victims revealed something important about the offender's mindset. The arrangement appeared intentional, purposeful, almost as if the killer wanted the bodies to be found. That detail changed the way investigators viewed the crime. Most murderers attempt to conceal evidence. They hide victims. They create distance between themselves and the crime scene. But in Atlantic City, the opposite appeared to happen. 4 women were left together in a location where discovery seemed inevitable. Why would someone take such a risk? Investigators considered several possibilities. Perhaps the killer wanted attention. Perhaps the arrangement carried personal meaning. Or perhaps the offender believed law enforcement would never identify them. Whatever the reason, the behavior suggested confidence. And that is where things became even darker. Experienced detectives understood that confidence often develops through familiarity. Familiarity with the area. Familiarity with victims. Familiarity with criminal behavior. Some investigators quietly wondered whether the offender lived nearby or regularly spent time in Atlantic City. If true, the killer may have walked past residents every day without attracting suspicion. Meanwhile, years continued passing without an arrest. For Kim's family, every unanswered question felt like another wound. They had already endured the shock of losing her. Now they faced something equally painful: uncertainty. No courtroom, no conviction, no explanation, just silence. As investigators revisited old evidence, they hoped advancements in forensic science might reveal something overlooked years earlier. New technologies had solved cases once considered impossible. But what they didn't know was whether enough evidence remained to produce meaningful answers. Still, one fact remained unchanged. Someone committed these murders. And somewhere, that person likely knows exactly what happened beside that drainage ditch. Cold cases often fade from public memory, but investigators rarely forget them. Behind the scenes, files remain open. Evidence remains preserved. Detectives continue revisiting details, searching for the one mistake a killer may have made years earlier. In Kim Raffo's case, that search never truly ended. As forensic science evolved, law enforcement agencies across the country began solving decades-old murders through DNA technology and advanced evidence analysis. Cases once considered hopeless suddenly produced suspects. Families finally received answers after waiting generations. Naturally, people began asking whether the same breakthrough could happen in Atlantic City. The possibility created cautious optimism. If biological evidence existed, modern testing might uncover information unavailable in 2006. If overlooked connections existed, digital databases could potentially identify them. Investigators understood that technology was changing the rules of criminal investigations. But technology cannot create evidence that never existed. That reality remained one of the greatest obstacles in the case. Public interest surged whenever a major cold case received national attention. Each time, people revisited the murders of Kim Raffo and the other victims. New theories emerged. New discussions spread online. Some tips reached investigators. Most failed to produce results. Yet detectives refused to completely dismiss any possibility. What happened next was both encouraging and frustrating. Renewed attention brought fresh eyes to the investigation. Reporters examined old records. True crime researchers analyzed timelines. Community members shared memories they had never previously reported. Some information appeared promising. Some raised entirely new questions. But despite years of effort, no suspect emerged publicly. For Kim's loved ones, that reality remained heartbreaking. Every renewed investigation sparked hope. Every dead end brought disappointment. The cycle repeated again and again. Still, history has shown that many killers eventually make mistakes. Secrets become difficult to carry forever. Relationships change. Consciences weaken. Witnesses decide to speak. And if someone has remained silent about what happened in November 2006, investigators believe that silence may not last forever. The longer an unsolved murder remains open, the more difficult it becomes to separate fact from speculation. Over the years, countless theories have surrounded the Atlantic City murders. Some suggested a serial killer operating across multiple states. Others focused on local offenders who understood the area intimately. A few theories became so popular that many people began treating them as facts. Investigators, however, approached the case differently. They focused on evidence. That distinction is important because high-profile cases often attract misinformation. Rumors spread rapidly. Witness accounts change over time. Public assumptions can distract from actual investigative work. Detectives understood that solving the murders of Kim Raffo and the other victims required facts, not guesses. Even so, certain questions continued haunting the investigation. Why were the victims found in that specific location? Why were they arranged in such a deliberate manner? Why did the killer remove shoes and socks? Were those details meaningful, or were they intended to mislead investigators? Every question seemed connected to another mystery. Meanwhile, Kim's family continued carrying the weight of uncertainty. Years had passed since her murder, but grief does not follow a schedule. The pain remained. The absence remained. Every milestone became a reminder of what had been stolen. As public attention shifted between different true crime stories, investigators remained committed to preserving the facts. They understood that one credible witness, one overlooked piece of evidence, or one confession could completely transform a case. And that possibility continues driving the investigation today. What makes unsolved murders so unsettling is the knowledge that the story is incomplete. Somewhere, there's a missing chapter. Somewhere, there is information capable of explaining exactly what happened. The challenge is finding it. Because if the truth behind Kim Raffo's murder is ever uncovered, it may reveal far more than anyone currently expects. And that possibility continues to keep investigators searching. Nearly 2 decades have passed since Kim Raffo was murdered, yet the case continues to cast a shadow over Atlantic City. Time has changed the city. Buildings have changed. Neighborhoods have changed. Even investigators have changed. But the central mystery remains exactly where it began. Who killed Kim Raffo? That question has survived every lead, every theory, and every disappointment. For many people, Unsolved cases eventually become statistics. For families, they never do. Kim's loved ones continue living with a reality that cannot be fixed by time alone. They know how her story ended. They simply do not know why. And that missing answer changes everything. Investigators often describe unsolved murders as puzzles with missing pieces. The Atlantic City murders fit that description perfectly. Detectives possess certain facts. They know where the victims were found. They understand some of the circumstances surrounding their lives. They know a killer existed. What they lack is the final connection. The connection that turns suspicion into proof. The connection that turns evidence into an arrest. The connection that transforms a mystery into a solved case. Throughout the years, law enforcement has encouraged anyone with information to come forward. Even details that seem insignificant can become critical when combined with existing evidence. A forgotten conversation, a strange comment, an unusual behavior observed years ago. Any of it could matter, and that is what makes this case so frustrating. The truth may already exist in someone's memory. Someone may know who was responsible. Someone may know what happened during those final hours. Someone may have remained silent for nearly 20 years. If that person ever decides to speak, the entire investigation could change overnight. Until then, the mystery remains, and the search for justice continues. Because despite the passing years, the story of Kim Raffo is not finished yet. Today, the murder of Kim Raffo remains one of the most haunting unsolved cases connected to Atlantic City. The years have passed, but the questions remain frozen in time. Investigators still seek answers. Families still seek justice. And the person responsible has never publicly faced accountability. That reality is what makes the case so disturbing. A mother lost her life. Children lost a parent. A family lost someone they loved. And nearly 20 years later, the mystery still survives. When people examine this case, they often focus on the crime scene, the arrangement of the victims, the unanswered forensic questions, the possibility of a serial offender. Those details are important. But there is another side to the story that should never be forgotten. Kim Raffo was a human being. Her struggles did not define her. Her addiction did not define her. The circumstances of her death did not define her. She mattered to people who loved her, and that is why the search for answers continues. Cases like this remind us that justice does not always arrive quickly. Sometimes it takes years. Sometimes it takes decades. Sometimes a single overlooked detail changes everything when nobody expects it. Investigators know this. Families know this. And perhaps the killer knows it too. Because every unsolved murder carries a hidden risk for the offender. Evidence can resurface. Witnesses can speak. Technology can evolve. Secrets can break apart under pressure. The passage of time protects some criminals, but it exposes others. As long as the case remains open, the possibility of answers remains alive. For Kim Raffo's family, that hope may be the most important thing left. Somewhere the truth still exists. Somewhere, the final piece of the puzzle remains waiting. And until that piece is found, the murder of Kim Raffo will continue standing as a chilling reminder that some of the darkest mysteries are the ones that remain unsolved.